The hum of dying fluorescent lights filled the narrow corridor like a tired heartbeat. Marcus Webb dragged his tool cart behind him, its wheels squeaking against the metal floor in an irregular rhythm that had become the soundtrack to his existence. 11 years on Helios 7. 11 years of fixing pipes, rewiring panels, and pretending he wasn't slowly disappearing into the station's endless gray walls. His shift should have ended 2 hours ago, but the heating system in Section D had other plans. Now, at nearly midnight station time, he found himself heading toward the forgotten storage, bays at the station's edge places, where broken equipment went to die and where nobody ventured unless absolutely necessary. Marcus punched in the access code, and the heavy door groaned open, revealing darkness punctuated by the blinking red lights of deactivated machinery. He swept his flashlight across the cluttered space. Old compression units, defunct air scrubbers, containers marked with faded warning labels. The heating duct he needed to check ran along the far wall, barely visible behind towers of obsolete tech. He was halfway across the bay when he heard it. Sound so soft he almost convinced himself it was his imagination. A tiny, shuddering breath. Marcus froze, his flashlight beamed steady on a stack of supply crates. The station had been experiencing minor rodent issues lately. Someone's escaped lab mice, probably, but this sound was different. Too controlled, too deliberate. Hello? His voice echoed in the cavernous space. Maintenance. If someone's back here, you need to movement. A flash of something pale darting between shadows. Marcus's pulse quickened. He adjusted his flashlight, sweeping it slowly across the crates. I'm not going to hurt anyone. I just need to check the heating system. Silence stretched out like a held breath. Then, from behind an overturned equipment locker, came a voice so small and trembling that Marcus had to strain to hear it. Please, do you have food? His heart nearly stopped. That was not the voice of any human he'd ever heard. It was delicate, melodic, with an accent that bent vowels in unfamiliar ways. And it sounded terrified. Who's there? Marcus kept his voice gentle, lowering the flashlight so it wouldn't blind whoever was hiding. I'm Marcus. I work here. Are you hurt? A pause. Then, you are alone? Yes, just me. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Slowly, something emerged from behind the locker dot. She was the most extraordinary thing Marcus had ever seen, standing no more than 10 inches tall. The girl, and she was clearly a girl, despite her alien features, had skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light like moonlight on water. Her hair fell in silver-white waves past her shoulders, and her eyes were enormous and violet, filled with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. She wore what looked like the remnants of a gray uniform, torn and dirty. Marcus's flashlight clattered to the floor. Don't be afraid, she whispered, taking a tiny step backward. Her voice carried a strange quality, as if he could feel her words as much as hear them. I know I should not be here. I know humans do not expect. But please, I am so hungry. Marcus slowly crouched down, making himself smaller, less threatening. His mind raced through impossible explanations. Alien species visited the station regularly for trade, but nothing like this. Nothing so small, so vulnerable, so hidden. What's your name? He asked softly. The girl wrapped her thin arms around herself. Neva. My name is Neva. I am Velith. She pronounced it with a soft V that sounded like wind through leaves. Neva. Marcus tested the name. How long have you been hiding here? 5 days. Her voice broke slightly. Maybe 6. I lost count. 5 days without food? She nodded, and Marcus could see her trembling even from several feet away. I found water from a leaking pipe, but I could not find food. Everything is too high. Too locked, too. Too big, Marcus finished. He sat down completely, crossing his legs. Neva, I need to ask you something important. Are you here by choice? Did someone bring you to the station? Her expression changed instantly, fear, flooding those violet eyes like a sudden storm. They will look for me. They will say, I am cargo. I am property. They will lie about what my people are. She took a shaky breath, and Marcus felt something strange in his chest, as if her emotions were rippling outward, touching him. I escaped. I ran. I hid. But they always find us eventually. Velith are too valuable to lose. Marcus's fists clenched. Valuable how? Neva's small hand touched her heart. We feel what others feel. We sense emotions like you sense temperature. The hunters use us to manipulate, to interrogate, to break people. They call it empathic extraction. We call it torture. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd heard rumors of trafficking in the outer colonies, whispers of species exploited for their unique abilities. But seeing the evidence standing before him, tiny, terrified, and starving made it horrifyingly real. I have food, he said quietly, reaching slowly for his pack. In my bag, protein bars. They're not fancy, but yes. The word burst from her like a prayer. Please, yes. Marcus pulled out a bar and unwrapped it carefully, breaking off a piece about the size of his thumb. To Neva, it would be a substantial meal. He set it on the floor between them and slid it gently toward her. She approached with caution, watching his face the entire time. When she picked up the piece, her tiny hands barely wrapped around it. She took a bite, and Marcus saw tears stream down her face. Thank you, she whispered between bites. Thank you, thank you. I thought I would die here. Alone. I thought no one would care about something so small. Something shifted in Marcus's chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. Purpose, connection, the overwhelming need to protect this fragile being from whatever cruelty had driven her into hiding. Neva, he said carefully, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? She looked up at him, those violet eyes studying his face with an intensity that felt like being seen for the first time in years. Then very slowly she nodded. I can feel you, she whispered. Your emotions. You are lonely. You have been lonely for so long. But right now, you feel protective, determined. A tiny smile touched her lips. You want to help me. Marcus smiled back. Yes, I do. But you need to tell me everything. Who's looking for you? How dangerous they are, and what they'll do if they find you. Neva finished the food and moved a little closer. The woman who hunts me is named Kesvaro. She commands a trafficking ship called the Crimson Veil. She has been collecting Velith for 3 years now. She took me from my homeworld when I was very young. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. She will burn this entire station to find me, and she will kill anyone who helps me. The words should have terrified him, should have made him reconsider, back away, alert the authorities. But instead, Marcus felt something crystallize inside him, a decision made before conscious thought could interfere. Then we'd better make sure she doesn't find you, he said. Neva's eyes widened. You would risk this? For me? We only just met. Marcus thought about his empty quarters, his non-existent social life, the way he'd been sleepwalking through existence for years. He looked at this tiny being who'd survived 5 days alone in the dark, who'd escaped slavery and was still fighting to stay free. Sometimes, he said softly, the most important decisions we make are the ones we don't think about. My gut says to help you, Neva, so that's what I'm going to do. For the first time since emerging from hiding, Neva's expression softened into something like hope. I can feel it from you. You mean this. You truly mean this. I do. She took several steps closer, until she stood just inches from his hand. Then, very carefully, she placed her tiny palm against his finger. The touch sent a warm pulse through Marcus's entire body, not physical, but emotional. He could feel her gratitude, her relief, and underneath it all, a fierce determination to survive. "Thank you, Marcus Webb," she said. "I will remember this moment for the rest of my life." Marcus gently curled his finger around her hand. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safer than this storage bay. My quarters aren't much, but they're warm and hidden. And I've got more food than protein bars." As he carefully lifted Neva and tucked her safely into his jacket pocket, with her permission, Marcus realized his life had just taken an irreversible turn. Somewhere on or near this station, a ruthless trafficker would soon realize her escaped cargo had found an ally. But as he felt, Neva's small form settled trustingly against his chest. Her heart beat rapid but steady. Marcus found he didn't care about the danger. For the first time in 11 years, he had something worth protecting. Something that made him feel human again, and he would fight like hell to keep her safe. Marcus's quarters were smaller than most people expected for someone who'd been on Helios 7 for over a decade. A narrow bunk, a single desk cluttered with repair manuals, a tiny kitchenette, and a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. The walls were bare, except for a faded poster of Earth's mountains, a place he'd never been and probably never would visit. But as he carefully closed the door behind him and engaged the privacy lock, the cramped space suddenly felt like a sanctuary. "You can come out now," he said softly. Opening his jacket pocket, Neva climbed out carefully, using the fabric as handholds. When she reached his palm, she stood for a moment, looking around the room with wonder in her violet eyes. "This is yours? All of this space?" Marcus felt a pang of sadness at her question. "It's not much, but yeah. It's home." He lowered his hand to the desk, creating a bridge for her. "You can explore if you want. Just be careful near the edges." Neva stepped onto the desk and immediately moved toward a stylus he'd left lying there. She touched it gently, and Marcus watched as her expression became distant, focused. "This object," she said quietly, "you use it often. I can feel the warmth of repeated handling. And frustration many sessions where you worked on difficult problems." She looked up at him. "You fix things that others have given up on." Marcus pulled out his desk chair and sat down slowly, fascinated. "Your empathic ability. You can sense emotions in objects too?" "Everything that is touched carries echoes of feeling," Neva explained. She moved across the desk with careful, deliberate steps. "Your tools carry determination. Your bed," she glanced toward it, "carries loneliness. So much loneliness, Marcus. You sleep alone and wake alone and wish things were different." The accuracy of her observation made his chest tighten. "Is that uncomfortable for you? Feeling all of that?" Neva sat down on the edge of a coffee mug, a throne-sized seat for her. "Sometimes. The traffickers taught us that our abilities made us valuable, but also cursed. They would force us into rooms with prisoners, making us amplify their fears until they broke." Her voice wavered. "I hated it. Every moment of it. Feeling their terror, their despair, knowing I was the cause." Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "You weren't the cause, Neva. You were a victim, too. They weaponized your gift." "Gift," she repeated, testing the word. "My people call it heart singing. We use it to build deep connections, to understand each other perfectly, to love without misunderstanding." A sad smile crossed her face. "The traffickers call it emotional leverage. What do you call it?" Neva met his eyes. "Right now, I call it survival. Without it, I would not have known you were safe to approach. I felt your loneliness from across the storage bay, It called to me like a beacon. Lonely people are often kind to other lonely things. Marcus absorbed that, feeling exposed and understood in equal measure. How many of your people did Kesvoro capture? From my home world? 47. Neva's voice dropped to a whisper. From other colonies and ships? I do not know. Hundreds, perhaps. We are scattered across the trafficking network. Some are used for interrogation, like I was. Others are sold to wealthy individuals who want companions who can perfectly anticipate their desires. The disgust in her tone was palpable. That's slavery, Marcus said flatly. Yes, but in the outer territories. Laws are only as strong as enforcement. And Velith are small. Easy to hide. Easy to transport. Easy to claim as exotic pets or biological curiosities rather than people. She wrapped her arms around herself. Who fights for something that fits in a pocket? I will, Marcus said immediately. We'll figure out how to stop her, Neva. How to free your people. Neva looked at him with such intensity that he felt it like warmth spreading through his chest. You truly mean that? I can feel it. But Marcus, you do not understand what you are facing. Kesvoro has resources, weapons, connections. She will not simply let me go, and she will make an example of anyone who helps me. Marcus stood and moved to his small kitchenette, pulling out actual food bread, cheese, some dried fruit. He prepared a tiny portion on a bottle cap, creating a proper plate for her. Then we'll have to be smarter than her. He brought the makeshift plate to the desk. Neva stared at it, then at him, and he felt something shift in the air between them, gratitude. Yes, but also something deeper. Recognition. Why? She asked softly. Why risk everything for someone you just met? Someone not even your species? Marcus sat back down, considering the question seriously. 11 years ago, I came to this station running from something. A failed relationship, a dead-end career planetside, a life that felt like it was suffocating me. I thought isolation would help, just me and my tools, and machines that made sense. He paused, watching her begin to eat with delicate, precise movements. But isolation just made me hollow. I've been walking through my life like a ghost. Neva. And then you appeared, terrified and starving. And suddenly nothing about my comfortable emptiness mattered anymore. Neva stopped eating, her violet eyes shimmering with unshed tears. You feel it too, she whispered. The connection. What do you mean? She set down the piece of bread carefully. Heart singing works both ways. When two beings are truly open to each other, when loneliness meets loneliness and desperation meets hope, the emotions harmonize. I can feel you, Marcus. But I think you are beginning to feel me too. Marcus realized she was right. Since the moment she'd touched his finger in the storage bay, he'd been aware of something he couldn't quite name, a warmth in his chest, a sense of her presence that went beyond sight and sound. Her fear had become his fear. Her hope, his hope. Is that normal? He asked. For Velith, yes. For humans? Neva tilted her head. I do not know. But I have never felt it this strongly with anyone else. Not even my own people. She moved closer to him across the desk. Marcus, I must tell you something. Heart singing can deepen over time. The more we are together, the more attuned we become. Eventually, we may feel each other's emotions as clearly as our own. Some would call it a bond. Others would call it love, Marcus finished quietly. Neva nodded slowly. Or the beginning of it. But I need you to understand this is not manipulation. I am not forcing this connection. It is simply happening. Because we are both so desperately lonely and so desperately in need of not being alone anymore. Marcus extended his hand, palm up, on the desk. Neva walked into it without hesitation, and he carefully lifted her to eye level. This close, he could see the intricate patterns in her silver skin, the way her hair caught the dim light of his quarters, the fierce intelligence in her eyes. "I don't feel manipulated," he said softly. "I feel alive. For the first time in years, Neva, I feel like I matter. Like what I do matters." "You matter to me," she said, and the words resonated through him like a tuning fork. "Already you matter more than I can express." They stayed like that for a long moment, human and Velith, looking at each other across an impossible divide of size and species, yet feeling closer than either had felt to anyone in years. A sudden chime from Marcus's door shattered the moment. They both froze. Marcus quickly but gently lowered Neva back to the desk and gestured for her to hide. She immediately darted behind his stack of manuals, disappearing from view just as the door chimed again. More insistently, Marcus took a breath to steady himself and opened the door. His supervisor, a heavy-set woman named Greta Hollis, stood in the corridor with her tablet in hand and an expression of bureaucratic annoyance. "Webb, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Security situation. Some private contractors just docked looking for an escaped specimen, they called it. Some kind of small alien. Station authorities are cooperating with the search." Greta scrolled through her tablet. "They're asking all personnel to report any unusual sightings, especially in maintenance areas and ventilation systems." Marcus forced his expression to remain neutral, even as his pulse skyrocketed. "What kind of alien?" "They didn't give specifics. Just said it was dangerous and needed to be contained for everyone's safety." Greta looked up from her tablet. "They're doing a full sweep starting tomorrow morning. All sections, including crew quarters. You'll need to make your space available for inspection." His mind raced. Tomorrow morning. Less than 12 hours. Sure, no problem. Greta studied him with the particular suspicion that came from 15 years of managing maintenance workers. "You look tense, Webb. Everything okay?" "Just tired. Long shift, aren't they all?" She tapped her tablet. "One more thing, these contractors are paying a bounty for information. 5,000 credits for a confirmed sighting leading to recovery." She raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot of money for a dangerous specimen." "Yeah," Marcus agreed, his mouth dry. "It is. Anyway, keep your eyes open. And get some rest. You look like hell." Greta turned and walked back down the corridor. Marcus closed the door and engaged every lock he had. When he turned around, Neva had emerged from hiding, and the fear radiating from her was almost overwhelming. "Tomorrow morning," she whispered. "They will search here. They will find me." Marcus crossed to the desk in 2 strides. "No, they won't, because you won't be here. Where will I go? I cannot hide in the storage bay again. They will search there first. There's another option." Marcus pulled up a schematic on his desktop computer, showing the station's layout. Section K. It's a partially constructed expansion that was abandoned 3 years ago when funding dried up. No power, no life support, completely sealed off from the main station. Nobody goes there. But how will I survive without life support? The section isn't completely airless. It was sealed mid-construction, so there's residual atmosphere. It'll be cold and uncomfortable, but breathable for short periods. He looked at her seriously. "I can't go with you. I have to maintain my normal routine, or they'll get suspicious. But I can set you up with supplies, heating elements, and I'll visit every day during my shifts." Neva's small face crumpled with worry. "You would be alone again. And I would be alone. The connection we are building separation might weaken it. Or it might strengthen it," Marcus said gently. "Knowing we're both fighting to see each other again." She moved to the edge of the desk closest to him, and he offered his hand again. This time, when she stepped onto his palm, She moved to the center and sat down, her back against his thumb. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I am afraid. Not just of Kesboro. I am afraid of how much I already need you. We have known each other for only hours, yet the thought of being separated feels like losing a part of myself." He could feel it too, the invisible thread connecting them, growing stronger with every shared moment, every honest word. "I know. I feel it too. This is how bonds form for Velith," Neva continued. "Quickly, intensely, completely. But humans, you do not work this way. You need time, caution, certainty. What if this is too much for you? What if you wake up tomorrow and realize you have made a terrible mistake?" Marcus lifted his hand so they were eye to eye again. "Neva, I've spent 11 years being cautious, playing it safe, keeping everyone at arm's length. And where did it get me? Alone in a metal box, fixing things for people who barely knew my name." He paused, making sure she could feel the truth of his words. "Meeting you isn't a mistake. It's the first real choice I've made in years." Tears spilled down Neva's cheeks, tiny, glistening drops that caught the light. "If we survive this, Marcus Webb, I think my heart will sing for you for the rest of my life." "Then let's make sure we survive," he said softly. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Marcus packed a small insulated bag with food, water, a portable heating unit, and blankets cut down to Neva's size. He printed out a map of Section K and showed her the safest places to hide if anyone somehow accessed the abandoned area. As he worked, Neva sat on his shoulder, occasionally touching his neck or cheek, small gestures that sent warmth flooding through him each time. He was beginning to understand what she meant about feeling each other. Her presence wasn't just physical anymore. It was emotional, intimate in a way he'd never experienced with anyone. At 3 in the morning. Station time, Marcus carried Neva through the silent corridors toward the sealed access. Point to Section K. He'd disabled the security camera on this route hours ago, a simple maintenance override that wouldn't raise suspicion until morning. The entrance to Section K was marked with warning signs and covered in dust. Marcus keyed in his override code, and the door groaned open, revealing darkness beyond. 2 days, he whispered as he set up her supplies in a small alcove just inside. "I'll come back in 2 days when the search has moved on." "Can you manage that long?" Neva nodded from his pocket, but he could feel her fear like a cold weight. "I have survived worse. But Marcus, if something happens to you, if they suspect, they won't." He gently lifted her out and set her down near the supplies. The heating unit was already running, creating a small sphere of warmth. "You're resourceful, Neva. You survived 5 days alone before you found me. You can do this." She looked up at him, and even in the dim light from his flashlight, he could see the conflict in her expression, fear of separation, warring with trust in him. 2 days, she repeated. "And then?" "And then we figure out the next step, together." Neva moved forward suddenly and wrapped her arms around his thumb, the only part of him she could embrace. "I will count every moment until I see you again." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Me too." As he sealed the door and walked back through the empty corridors to his quarters, Marcus felt the connection between them stretch like a golden thread, growing thinner but never breaking. She was there, in the back of his mind and the center of his chest, a tiny presence that had somehow become essential. He lay in his bunk as artificial dawn began to brighten his window, knowing that everything had changed. Somewhere in the darkness of Section K, Neva was settling into her hiding place, probably scared, definitely alone, but not completely alone, because he carried her with him now, woven into something deeper than friendship, stranger than romance, more profound than either. And when Kesboro came searching, she would find nothing but a maintenance worker who'd finally found something. worth maintaining a connection that transcended every logical boundary, and a reason to stop sleepwalking through his life. 2 days, he thought, as sleep finally claimed him. Just hold on for 2 days. In the darkness of Section K, Neva pulled the blanket around herself and whispered into the silence. 2 days, Marcus. I promise. And across the station, through steel and space and impossible distance, they both felt the other's determination. The heart singing had begun in earnest, and neither of them wanted it to stop.